the Texans made some trades today, and they got David Montgomery. They traded a 4th-round pick and offensive lineman Juice Scruggs and a 7th-round pick, and the Texans got Montgomery. They also traded Titus Howard to the Cleveland Browns as well for, I believe, a 4th or a 5th-round pick, one of those. Probably because Titus Howard wants to get paid. He did get paid.
He's not bad if you have good players around him.
Yeah, he's not. He was the Texans' best statistical pass protector this past year. But the Texans
below average are the best.
This past year, 30th in pass block win rate, 32nd in run block win rate. And here's kind of like my thoughts on like the Texans right now. They just, with CJ Stroud catching a lot of the heat, I feel like it's only fair to just put into perspective how bad the offensive line situation has been around him since he's gotten drafted there. Because in 2023, they were 27th in pass block win rate, 28th in run block win rate. In 2024, they were 22nd in pass block win rate better. They were 31st in run block win rate. And that was Laramie Tunsil bringing that up to 22 because then they lose him and they're 30th in pass block win rate, which is what we all predicted. But there's a lot of Texans fans mad that we didn't know we were talking about and the Texans were going to rebuild their offensive line and make it great in one offseason. And now we're here a year later. And in back-to-back offseasons, Houston has traded their 2 best offensive linemen in Tunsil and in Titus Howard. I understand the approach they're trying to go with, getting Montgomery and trying to build a semblance of a run game. But since Stroud has been the quarterback for this team, they have not been able to run the ball and they have not been able to protect them effectively or whoever's carrying the football. So at this point, the Texans organization has kind of lost my trust in their ability to build out and scout a good offensive line because they just haven't in the 3 years in the DeMeco Ryans era. And I have huge question marks with Montgomery, who's not the most explosive back. He's good.
He's a grinder.
He was also in a ridiculously great situation for the most part in Detroit with their offensive line. This past year it took a step back, but overall, you're going from at least an average offensive line situation to one of the worst. That 4.5 yards per carry number can quickly go to 3.8 in this situation because of how bad it is. So while I think Montgomery's a good back, it gives them at least a solid back to be there. The offensive line is still easily the biggest question mark, and if that doesn't get fixed, they're not going to be able to run the football anyway.
Yeah, it's a lot of good things. Definitely caught me off guard. I do like David Montgomery in a small portion of this. I do think he's a solid running back. Definitely something you need. I thought Woody Marks keeping him on the roster and they're bringing in David Montgomery. Plus, with the information about Joe Mixon's injury, you really don't know what's going on with that situation. Always like to keep 2 quality running backs on the roster, but they don't have anything to run behind. And I think that's been the most important thing. Last year in the draft, you went and you got 2 extra wide receivers. You brought in Christian Kirk, but you have yet to build up this offensive line to kind of help out CJ Stroud, who's not the most not the most mobile quarterback in the league. And it sucks because you're kind of wasting away a great defense. Like this defense is all world. It's statistically one of the best defenses we've seen in NFL history. And it's only going to keep getting older. I mean, these guys are young. Obviously, Will Anderson, you just drafted. Stingley, you just drafted. Kamari Lassiter, you just drafted. Jalen Petrie, you just drafted. So these guys, Daniil Hunter, you got in a trade, I believe, or free agency, whatever it was. So these guys aren't old, but you're going to have to start paying these guys. And with that being said, the money is going to become less flexible. And that's going to put a toll on your defense. And I think you can't waste that. Now, there's a couple, O-linemen in free agency, Kevin Zeitler, I believe, Tyler Lindenbaugh, but how enticing is the Houston Texans to where those guys would come there? How enticing is your draft room to where you go out and you draft an offensive line? You've tried to do that over the past 2 or 3 seasons. And Juice Scruggs, if I'm not mistaken, is the guy you drafted, and you just traded him away. So you haven't really hit on that mark. Laramie Tunsil, you traded away. Titus Howard, you traded away. I don't even know what their offensive line looks like on paper right now.
There's only 2 locked-in guys.
Yeah, so you're probably going to have to draft 3 or 4 more because you need depth. Probably going to go into free agency, grab some other guys, and it's going to be another disaster season at the offensive line unless you find a way to fix this shit.
It's Ariante Ursary at left tackle and Ed Ingram at right guard. He was
in Minnesota.
Yeah, he had a breakout year. He was very bad in Minnesota. But a change in scheme, became a really good run blocker with the Texans this past year. Pass blocking, work in progress, but those are really the only 2 locked in spots. Like Titus Howard played left guard and a right tackle for them. They have a long time right tackle who's always going from team to team, Trent Brown. They had him at right tackle. They have Jake Andrews at center. There are 3 spots on the offensive line that feel like are up for debate. I think the first round pick is probably right tackle, like maybe Caleb Lomu. He's been a player that's been mocked to them heavily. It's an overhaul, essentially. You need 3 new positions, and they need to be quality starters for them to run the offense they want to run, because their offensive line has essentially made it so they can't run an effective offense. It's too big of a detriment. And I think the goal, it's too unrealistic to think that this is going to go from bottom of the league to elite, but they just need to not be a detriment. They can't be something that actively holds you back play to play. Maybe in sequences, but
20th in the league is better than what they got.
Yeah,
now.
It can't be a complete disaster. Kind of like what Seattle went from. Seattle went from an offensive line that was terrible with Geno to they were all right with Sam. That's it. And that's kind of the leap that Houston needs to take, or else they're going to waste their defense again, because their defense is ridiculously great.
Yeah, if I was a Texans fan or a CJ Stroud fan, I'd be pissed off. I think David Montgomery's a good player. I think he's an above average running back. When he went from Chicago to Detroit, I don't think anyone thought much of it in terms of like this changes things, but like you mentioned, Joel, when you have that great offensive line, then eventually they get Jahmyr Gibbs. All of a sudden, David Montgomery in a complementary role behind a great offensive line and with a great play caller, you're like, holy shit, David Montgomery is one of the better running backs in football. But I always thought he was like an above average talent just in a great situation. And now he's an above average talent who's a few years older and one of the worst situations in football. To give up a 4th round pick, a 7th round pick, and one of the guards you drafted in the last couple of seasons, it's a steep price to pay for David Montgomery. It's not a day 2 pick, it's not a 1st round pick, obviously, but in today's market for a running back, like that's not nothing. That's a 4th round pick you could have used potentially to go draft or to go trade for a veteran offensive lineman or another veteran out there in the market. So I thought, first of all, for Detroit, they didn't really want to give up David, at least it seemed like, but to get that, I thought it was a pretty good haul for them. I don't trust them at all. Like, I don't trust Houston to figure this out. And it's so weird to be able to build and develop such an elite defense and just have everything figured out there for the most part. You have one of the best defense, if not the best defense in football. And on the other side, you just don't put any of the same resource into it. Like, you don't go out there and they haven't made these big, not that it always works, but you don't make these like Danielle Hunter level signings, right? You don't go in and put a top 5 pick other than CJ Stroud, obviously, like you did for Will Anderson or Derek Stingley. You drafted CJ Stroud, number 2 overall. He has this MVP level rookie season. And since that moment, you've done basically nothing to help him. The biggest thing you've done so far is to get David Montgomery. And if that's the biggest move you've made in the 4 years that CJ Stroud has been there, that's a detriment to your front office and just not really understanding where the NFL is going. I understand this year, especially 2 great defenses, New England, Seattle, awesome, right? That you could say they carried them in these playoffs, even though Sam was great against San Francisco or against the Rams, whatever. But at the end of the day, you saw how much CJ Stroud struggled this year and how much he struggled in the playoffs and how much he struggled the previous year coming off the great rookie season. So to take away from his offensive line with no real plan yet that we know in place, I get it. You're going to have to pay Will. You're going to have to pay CJ Stroud down the line. But you're going to want to pay CJ Stroud. The way we're going right now, it's like we're going to pick up his 5th-year option. Hopefully he plays well. If not, we're going to franchise tag him. I mean, right now, there's a reason why we're not talking about extensions with CJ Stroud. I don't think it's CJ Stroud's fault. Like, he's had his hiccups. He's had his issues. But the infrastructure around him, it's Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs for a year before the injury. Tank Dell's always getting hurt. It's just, you're not putting him in a situation to succeed. And maybe scheme changes, you know what I mean? You're able to hit on 1 or 2 draft picks and you hit on a free agent and the offensive line's the 21st best unit in football. That would be awesome. But we said that this past year and they were still the 30th ranked offensive line in football. So I just have very little faith in them figuring this out. If they do, good for them. But right now there's still a lot of holes. And if you're not able to get CJ Stroud back to playing at like a top 12 to 14 level, it feels like a waste.
I'm going to try not to reiterate too much of what you guys are saying because obviously I agree. That being said, they have not put the same level of energy into the offense like the defense. Correct. I do believe they've tried. I think Tank Dell was trying because CJ Stroud wanted Tank Dell. They got him Tank Dell. CJ Stroud got Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs was actually really good for them and really had a good connection with CJ Stroud. He tears his ACL. He doesn't end up coming back. That was really unfortunate. Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was a positive for them, especially a good safety blanket for him because we know that Joe Mixon is a good receiving back, but not the most efficient rusher. But that was something that they did for CJ Stroud. What they failed to do, which is the most basic thing that you should be doing for a player who thrives in the pocket, is build his offensive line. And that is where everybody who has criticism on the Texans building their offense has validity to it, because they have failed to put a solid offensive line in front of him. And in back-to-back years, like you mentioned, Joel, they traded away one of the best left tackles in the game in Tunsil. But, the penalties, it is better than what the hell you were going to put forth for the following season, any player, because you understand who Laramie Tunsil is. And then now this offseason, today, you trade your best offensive lineman in Titus Howard. I just think that I'm confused at the direction at the offensive line and what they're trying to do. And listen, if you go out there and this season you have a great offensive line, I'll be happy to be wrong. I really am hopeful for that, because this is a genuine all-time great defense that it would be a tragedy for it to be wasted and not have a legitimate chance to contend for a Super Bowl. And I'm saying this as a guy who obviously knows that my championship window as a Bronco fan is now. We have a great opportunity, but it is obvious if you are a fan of the game, you understand this is one of the best defenses we've seen in a long time. And we just watched the Philadelphia Eagles. This Texans defense is that great with an elite player at every single level. But this offensive line is limiting this team so drastically that they're unable to have legitimate, sustained success come playoff time. I don't think CJ Stroud is as bad as what he showed this playoffs. I can make all these jokes. Do I believe he's that bad? No. I think you have a top 10 player in Nico Collins at his position. And I think that when Tank Dell is healthy, he is an excellent complementary wide receiver. Build this offensive line. Do justice for this Texans team that is one of the most talented that we have.
All I got to say is that if the Texans don't have that infrastructure, CJ Stroud is not paid long term. He's the
next Sam.
He's the perfect resurrection candidate.
Yes, easy.
Yeah.